Hello and welcome to MetaWatch, Games Workshop's regular catch-up on all things matched play. In this episode, we're taking a trip to the 41st millennium to check out some Warhammer 40,000. And who better to do that with us than Josh from the studio. Josh, how you doing, mate? You good?
Really good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, very good, man. Pleasure to have you. Now, we did our Balanced Data Slate episode of MetaWatch a little while back.
We
didn't get the chance to have a bit of a chat to you. So, before we jump into it with the numbers and the graphs, let's have a little bit of a chat about your role and what it is you do as well.
Yeah, sure. So I've joined the studio recently, and part of my role is to help look at the balance of 40k. So that is looking at the codexes that are coming out, but also the current releases, indexes, and the codexes that are already out. As the game evolves and adapts, what the balance looks like, and then linked to that is things like the balance update, which we just did, and the points updates. That's a big part of my job going forward.
Oh, nice. Great. Awesome. So, without further ado, welcome to Games Workshop. And
Thank you.
further ado, let's take a look at where the meta is right now and how we're doing. So how's it looking?
Yeah, so the update's very new. So we're still seeing how that pans out in the meta, if you will, seeing how people adapt and how we've given them a new toolbox to play with. Units have changed points costs, their armies are being adjusted as they work out, or now I can fit this in, or now I need to make some adjustments to my army to play some of the other armies that might be up and coming. So it's all early days, but what we were hoping to see was that there was, when you go to an event, more people using a variety of armies felt they were in contention to try and podium or win that event. And as early days so far, but looking at some of the data we're already starting to see, we are starting to see that. So we're seeing a wider array of armies winning events or placing, which is fantastic. We knew that before the last balance update, Eldari and Chaos Space Marines in particular were the two that were head and shoulders above the rest and were winning the lion's share of events or podium at lion's share of events. That's not to say they still don't have a place. Eldari are still doing well, but now we've seen Astra Militarum winning events, we've seen World Eaters winning events, we've seen still some Eldari, we've even seen Drukhari, which is great to see because Drukhari were struggling before the balance update. So that's a really positive sign for us that more armies feel like they're in contention and players can choose the army they really like the theme and aesthetic of, but also still feel they can compete.
Okay, what about like Custodes as well? Because I know we were chatting about Custodes before this, talking about them sort of...
Yeah, so Custodes again. So Custodes they started at the beginning of 10th, were considered one of the top armies. And then in the last balance update, before the one we've just done, so the first update of 10th edition, we tackled some of their squad sizes and a few of their rules interactions, and it brought them down, but maybe a little bit more than we would have liked. So in this update, we've adjusted the points again and just tweaked their army rule to account for the change that we made to Devastating Wounds. Previously, Devastating Wounds caused mortal wounds, which the Custodes got a 4+ save against. In the first update, because Devastating Wounds changed from mortal wounds to their own ability effectively, the Custodes lost their durability against mortal wounds. So we've given them that back. And hopefully, as I said, we've still not a lot of data, but we're starting to see Custode players enjoying taking their armies to events again, and we're seeing a rise in the number of players using them. So that's always, again, a positive for us.
Yeah, so it is early doors, but like you were saying, it must be so great to see sort of a real mix of factions winning at some of those events as well.
Yes, for us, that's the ideal we want. When you look at the top 10 or the top 20 of any event, the great sign of a healthy meta is that there's a good mix of armies in there. If you look at the top 10 and it's 5 of one faction within that top 10, that indicates that, okay, this is clearly a stronger faction than others, and players are feeling they have to flock to that to compete. When there's a good mix, that's a really positive sign. But also just generally at a whole event, if you look at big events which have 100, 200, 300, some of the events like we talked about in the previous setting was like LVO is nearly 1,000 players.
Yeah.
Again, while the numbers are a good mix there, if the armies are skewed too heavily one way, so if the high population of players is taking one faction, it means there's less variety that you're going to play. Yeah. You have more likely to get play multiple, say, for example, if Eldar are dominating the number of players at an event, then me going to that event, I might have to play 2 or 3 or 4 Eldar players. Whereas if there's a good mix, then hopefully players can go to events and get a variety of different gaming experiences against different factions.
Nice. Let's chat about some of the new buffs and the debuffs that you've introduced and some of the trends that you're hoping to see with those introductions to those.
Yeah, so as we discussed last time, one of the things that the first line that a lot of people look at is points. We can adjust points on different units depending on, are they 2 points sufficient for their role, or are they struggling? They're a little bit too expensive. People feel they can't justify spending those points on that unit to do the role that it's designed to do. So that's one of the levers we always have access to. But where we also can make changes is changes to the rules themselves for either core rules, or if it's a faction we're concerned about, can be specific rules for them. So that can be buffing or debuffing. A good example is for Eldari. We knew Phantasm was too powerful a stratagem. It was probably one of the best stratagems in the game, where it gave you a guaranteed move at the end of your opponent's movement phase. Now we've turned it into a random move, so it's a D6 move rather than a flat 7 move. Now that's a debuff which, while it's still a powerful stratagem, it's more in line with the strength of other stratagems, whereas before it was, you could debate it, but it was arguably out and out better than any other stratagem.
Right.
So that's a good example of where we can use the rules to debuff something slightly if we feel that it was being used too often or it was too powerful. And then on the flip side, we can also buff an army's rules. So like we did with Drakari for their power through pain, we actually, when you use that ability and you're using it for combat, you gained an extra AP on your attack. So that actually really increased the lethality of those units when they're going into combat. That's an army-wide change for them. And then further, if we want to, like we did with Drakari, to give them more buffs, we gave them a whole new detachment and a new way to play. So that's the first time we've done that in the studio, but we're really excited to see how the Drakari players are reacting to that, and what that means for their win percentage and results at events.
That's great. So leading into that as well, what have you guys, in terms of the studio, what have you guys got your eyes on next? What are you kind of hoping to see? What are you looking out for? Yeah,
so for us, I mean, the 2 factions we're keeping probably the closest eye on is Necrons and Admech. And the reason for that is their codexes were very new when the balance update came out. So they didn't get an update in the last balance update. So we know that they are untouched codexes right now, and they need to be monitored to see, are they performing too well? We know the Necrons are trending a little bit higher than we'd like on the win percentages, so they probably need some adjustments to just bring them down slightly. And Admech, conversely, their win percentage is actually okay, but there's a number of units that maybe aren't quite hitting the roles that we hoped they'd perform on the tabletop. So again, we can look at maybe some adjustments to those to help encourage some of those units to have more play.
Nice. Well, Josh, thank you ever so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure to chat with you about the meta and where we are right now.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries at all. And thank you for joining us on MetaWatch. We'll see you next time.